Casey Abrams. Welcome to WJBC.
Hey, how's it going? How do I talk into this microphone?
You're exactly what you're doing.
Okay.
If you want headphones, you can have them. Otherwise, you're fine without them.
You know what? I like the real noise. I'm digging the real noise right now.
It's better to have no headphones. Otherwise, it messes up the do because your hair is just so touchable.
I mean, the do. It's not really. It's more of a don't. I think because there's not a lot of things that go into it. You know.
I can always tell a really good musician by the fact that his hair just naturally looks awesome.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, which means he's done nothing to it, and it just kills me.
Just let it grow, baby.
Because he's just constantly. If you've got bad hair, that means you're running your fingers through it in frustration and pulling on it all the time. Instead, you've just these nice, soft, long, flowing locks, which means you're at a peaceful place, aren't you?
I'm a very peaceful. I would like to think that these guys, the guys I'm sitting with, my musicians, they're the same way. They kind of have long. He has a hat on, but he's longer hair than me.
Are you hiding that underneath there, Taylor? Are you hiding some really long dreads or something?
Can I embarrass you? And can you take off your hat?
Sure, man.
Dude, look at this. This is crazy.
Okay.
Oh my gosh!
Oh wow! we may have to take some pictures of this. Is there going to be hairography on stage at the BCPA tonight?
Hairography.
I mean, it's some organized,
Thanks, Taylor.
hair moments.
I had to just wow and amaze her.
It's a new hat I had to wear. I don't know.
Yeah.
I felt like it was going to be a cold day, so.
This is Taylor Tessler, who will also be on stage with you, and we don't want to leave Jacob out. Jacob, your hair looks just fine too. All right.
Yeah,
I love that hair. He usually gels it up all nice, and we are always telling him to just leave it natural.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's
beautiful.
Beautiful hair.
Look at that. It's like Bruno Mars hair.
All right, now, some people travel around with musicians. Other people travel around with friends that happen to be their musicians. Are these guys which?
They're friends first, and then musicians second.
Because you and Jacob actually went to school together at Idlewild, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. He played sax, and I played the upright bass and sometimes the piano. And then we'd also do gigs. After I went to college, I came back and lived with my parents right before Idol. And him and Lake, and so it was him playing sax, a trumpet, and a guitar player, and they had an electric bass player that they played with, but he didn't play upright, so I decided to join him. So I was like the alumni that was playing with the
already featured group.
Yeah,
all right.
And it was at Cafe Roma. It was fun.
Now, Jacob, when you were watching him on American Idol, were you just counting the days until you could say, dude, when are we going on tour? Because you knew now he had a little bit of a bump, a little bit of a name. Were you planning on working with him, or were you thinking, maybe I should try this Idol thing too?
I actually didn't think I'd ever get to see him again because, he literally went from being around all the time to just totally gone. But it was a while before I saw you again, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a year after the show, I think.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'd already met Taylor, and I met Taylor through another guitarist. Like, I was touring with a guitarist, and his friend, who was Taylor, was like, "Hey, come sleep at our house on the way to your tour." And so I met him. And then I started playing the Mango Tree song, which maybe I'll play today.
I would like that.
Yeah.
Anything you want to play anytime, I'll just shut the hell up and you can play.
All right, good to know. Good to know.
Now, I really want to see the three of you guys on stage tonight because I know you play a variety of instruments, and I heard you warming up in the hallway earlier. Your voices blend incredibly well together. Are these two gentlemen featured on the album that I play over and over again when I'm camping in my RV?
I met them afterward. I went to England and recorded this album that's out. But hopefully the next album will have them. Well,
pardon me for going back in the past just a little bit before we talk about the future. True or false, you recorded your first big album post-Idol with Randy Jackson?
I didn't record it with him, but he recorded it for me.
Okay, so he helped produce.
Yeah.
That was my question. Did he just throw money and support towards you, or was he in the studio saying, dog, no, dog, yes?
Nah, he wasn't dogging me. He was. I mean, I guess he was, but no, he was. Yeah, he introduced me to some people. That was his role. He introduced me to the record label.
Okay, because that's a big compliment. You were not a winner of American Idol, and he didn't have to. But that's a big step for a guy in the music industry to say, "I love you anyway. I want to, help you out."
Yeah. He believed in my talent.
And as a bass player of Journey, to look at another bass player and say, "Hey, I think you're amazing." Did that help your career?
What was the question?
Did Randy Jackson's influence help your career post-Idol?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Well, that's a problem that I find a whole bunch of very talented musicians are having now, and vocalists. They're going on these reality shows, which gets their name out there, but in the end, it kind of hurts their credibility after the fact.
Yeah, and I was scared of that happening, but you just have to live with it. And sometimes like I remember hearing like, oh man, like someone will come and bring their husband and be like, I wasn't gonna come because I heard that it was an American Idol contestant, but then I was so happy to come. So I'm just imagining how many people don't come because they hear American Idol in the title.
Right.
So I try to be not American Idol's Casey Abrams, but Casey Abrams that was on American Idol. I try to make that difference as much as possible, but you can't ignore where you came from.
I'm very excited to welcome into the studio a Radio Bloomington legend. Archie J, I want you to meet Steve Vogel.
Good morning.
I have been lucky enough to know the Vogel family for many, many years since I arrived in town. Wonderful people, and yet I never got a chance to work with you in the news department. You were here in the WJBC hallways in the 70s and 80s till 93.
Right.
And went off to State Farm, and you lived happily ever after until you retired. And how long have you been fully retired now?
About 5 years.
How's that working out for you?
It's working out just fine, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, congratulations on all your success. At what point in time did you decide to write the book Reasonable Doubt, which we're talking about today, which covered the Hendricks murders? Were you here still at JBC, or were you over at State Farm?
No, actually, the book was published first while I was still here. It came out shortly after the first trial ended back in 1986, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Was it a big seller when it first came out?
Yeah, well, I was a hardcover at first, and then came out as a paperback, and the story was evolving, and it came through several editions as a paperback because the state Supreme Court first upheld the conviction of David Hendricks and the murder of his wife and 3 children. And then, a couple of years later, the state Supreme Court decided to rehear the case, threw it back into the lap of local prosecutors, whether or not they were going to retry him. They did. And so the book was updated several times. And it was last updated back in about 1992 when St. Martin's Press brought it out as part of their True Crime Classics library.
So when did it really start selling in a big way nationwide? Because you got to understand, Archie J, before the internet, before we could go and easily look up all kinds of information or watch trials on TV, the only way that we were getting any information about the biggest crime headline to ever hit Bloomington was by going to the newspaper and listening to WJBC. But thank you, Steve Vogel, for writing this book. We learned so much more than we ever knew.
It became a bestseller in 1990.
Was it just overwhelmingly popular in the Midwest, or were people all over the world reading it?
Well, I think it's the latter. It was a New York Times bestseller, so that shows you had some breadth of market, and it was a fun ride. So now we've updated it, and it's available as an ebook and as what we call a trade paperback. And
you need to get the new version because you have information that nobody else has, because even though we're talking about this television show that's going to air this weekend, they weren't able to get an interview with David Hendricks. You were.
That's true. We've added a couple thousand words to the book. Half of those couple thousand is an update of what's happened to Hendricks in the intervening years. The other part is kind of a compilation of interesting, sometimes quirky things that are tied to the case that I think readers will find of interest, particularly if they read the book the first time around. Mm-hmm. We've added some photos to the book. There are now more than a couple dozen photos in the book as well. And so here we are.
And it's your first time getting an e-version of it out.
It is.
Which is great, because you have to understand, this has been the most popular garage sale paperback of all time.
I tell people it's available for 30 cents at any garage sale in town, and 25 cents if I've autographed it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would like to get an autograph of a hard copy of this book, because it's the only true crime novel or true crime book I've ever read, and I read it from beginning to end, and every other page I had a different opinion as to, did he do it, did he not? Yeah. And the David Hendricks murder case, if you don't know, and I know, Archie J, this isn't a story that is familiar to you. You live in this town and you either know everything about this case or you know nothing about this case. You go back to November, election night of 1983, and what did the headline in the paper say the next morning?
Multiple deaths in East Side home or something like that.
And we come to find out that it is a woman who had 3 children. Her husband's out of town, and she and the 3 kids are bludgeoned with an axe and a hunting knife.
Wow.
And at the time, they didn't know who did it at all, and nobody suspected the husband, and everybody in town was freaked out thinking that there's an axe murderer coming for you next.
That's personal.
Probably the most brutal crime this part of the state has ever seen, and remains very controversial today.
Yes, and everyone was terrified until they arrest David Hendricks, the husband, on very superficial evidence. I mean, they didn't have fingerprints. They didn't have witnesses. They certainly didn't have security video.
There was no physical evidence at all against him or anybody else, for that matter. In fact, one of the investigators said this is the cleanest bloody crime I've ever seen. But he was convicted in the first trial on a completely circumstantial case.
And yet, after spending 6 years in jail and working with his lawyers and the entire family, his wife's family, I mean, the woman who was murdered along with her children, her family supported Mr. Hendricks.
Oh, really?
His family supported him as well. Wow. None of the family members thought that he did it, and he claimed his innocence loud and strong enough that they reviewed the case, and the Supreme Court of Illinois overturned it and let him out of jail. And we all go back to the book to see what we would have done. Reasonable Doubt, written by Steve Vogel. I want to ask you, though, about the television show that's coming out this weekend, what they asked you and what you think they're going to do with that television show on the Investigation Discovery Network. I'm Susan Saunders, and in studio, one of my favorite NFL quarterbacks, because he's the only one that gives me his number. So in studio, we have Alex Tanney from the Tennessee Titans. Nice to have you back, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good seeing you guys.
Okay, now I got to catch up here, all right? Because when you went last year and didn't make the backup quarterback position for Tennessee Titans, I just want you to know, first off, I was pissed. Because I just, every time you go out and play, you show them great numbers and great stats, and everything goes really, really well. And then they're like, yeah, we'll just put you over here in the practice squad. And people hold on to you. So last year, I'm sorry that you ended up with the foot injury. Foot's all better now?
Yep, yeah, feeling good now. Fully cleared and rehabbed most of the season, so it's feeling good.
But you're past your eligibility to be on the practice squad. So first off, Alex, tell me what happens now between you and the Tennessee Titans, because I know you want to stay there for your wife and for your baby. Nashville's a great city for you, but what's going on in the NFL for your career?
Yeah, so, I mean, essentially what happened was I broke my foot the last preseason game in Kansas City. I was placed on injured reserve. I was able to stay involved with the team and every day in meetings, still practicing, or not practicing. When we'd practice, I'd have to go rehab. But I was still able to travel and stuff, stay involved with the game plan. Just got cleared a couple weeks ago, so it's back to normal now. So I'm still under contract for one more season. We'll go back and report in April. So I'm going to enjoy these next few months off and jump right back into it. Yeah.
But when you go to training camp, at this point in time, you've really got to get either the quarterback position or a backup quarterback position to stay with the team. Yeah,
essentially, I just have to make the active roster. So, this will be my 7th camp now. And within the past 6 years, I've kind of bounced up and down, active practice squad. And like you said, I'm now out of practice squad eligibility. So it's kind of do or die. And then if I don't make it, I'll become a free agent. So, but like I said, we'd like to stay in Tennessee, and we love Nashville.
And how's the baby?
He's doing great.
Good.
Yeah, just turned 5 months a couple days ago. So his personality is really starting to show. He's sleeping well. So yeah, he's been great so far.
What'd you name him?
Gunner Michael.
Gunner
Michael.
I like
because you're a big Nelson fan?
No, it's just we thought it was unique.
Yeah.
And,
it is unique.
Yeah, we love it. So.
But I've talked to Gunner Nelson, and I asked him one time, I said, did you appreciate growing up with the name Gunner? That really kind of is a name that has a presence. And he's like, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was just great. So I hope that turns out the same way for your son.
Yeah.
Your wife is happy, and is she back to work yet or no?
She's going back to work here shortly in the next month or so.
And she's a physical therapist, right?
Yep, she's a PT down there at Midtown Hospital.
So was she double checking your PT work when you got home?
Oh, yeah. Yep. No, she did great, yeah.
Good. All right, the reason we always like to check in with Alex is because he's from Lexington, Illinois, where his dad was also a famous football coach, went on and had great success with Monmouth, and comes back to the neighborhood to teach everybody else how to do what you do and maybe make your way to the NFL. You've been doing the Tanny Passing Academy now for a good amount of time. Can you tell me, have we had success from some of the kids that have gone through your program into the college levels and beyond?
Yeah, it's been great. You know, it's crazy now. This is really the, I think, 7th year that, you know, I've really been involved. My dad's been doing it for 10 or 12 years since he retired. But like you said, it's been pretty cool now that we've done it for a good amount of time that we've been able to follow kids. You know, we've had kids come in as 8th graders or freshmen in high school, and you know, we've got a chance to work with them for 3 or 4 years, and they've gone on and continue to play collegially. So it's been really fun to follow. And, you know, when I'm down in Nashville in the fall, you know, I'm always keeping up to date with the kids we've worked with in this area.
That's awesome.
From here all the way over to the Quad Cities, really. So it keeps me involved back here, and it's really fun to get out and work with the kids.
You're listening to Central Illinois' news voice, WJBC and WJBC.com. I'm Adam Stasinski.
All right, Adam, I'm going to have a bit of a fangirl moment here. Are you ready? I have Patrick Warburton on the phone and Jeff Elliott in the studio. The amount of testosterone that is now festering around me is overwhelming, and I'm all excited because they're movie stars in their own right and movie writers, and I'm just... the other day you heard with Scott Laughlin, Jeff Elliott tell his amazing story, which of course became a phenomenal and well-reviewed book. Congratulations, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you so much,
on the success. And of course, Hoovie, the true story of the Elliott family. We are going to talk about that film in detail, about how it's going to be at the Normal Theater coming up here on January 31st, and how everybody's going to get their tickets based on your written book, Rebounding from Death's Door. But since we have the opportunity to talk to one of your buddies, your stunt double, Patrick Warburton, we're going to take that opportunity right now. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Susan.
Can I just call you the sexiest voice in Hollywood? Can I just call you Sexy for short? Would that be inappropriate?
Susan, you can call me anything you want, babe.
All right. I'm just going to call you Sexy. How exciting is it for you to get to meet a real-life person that you're portraying? Is that exciting or is that intimidating? Because you're starring as Jeff Elliott in this movie.
It's a little bit of both and all, Susan. I mean, with Jeff Elliott, those are big boots to fill. But it was cool. It was definitely cool to be able to get some inside information.
Let's start over for people who haven't heard the amazing story of the Elliott family. Jeff and your lovely wife Ruth and your son Eric and your lovely daughter are all part of the story that has now become this movie, Hoovie. Now, Jeff, when you wrote the book, Rebounding from Death's Door, did at any point in time you think this would become a film?
Yeah, no, I never imagined it being a film. You know, I wrote the book to inspire people and give people hope, and you know that was the purpose of the book. You know, just you never know what's going to happen. 5 years after I gave up with promoting the book, it lands in a producer's hands, and the next thing you know, here we are. So, you know, we've been very blessed from that regard. But, you know, one of the things I would love, Patrick's humble, and one of the things I have to say about you, Patrick, was in the firefighting scene. We had a car fire scene. And originally I was going to double for him. And Patrick's like, no, I want to do the scene in 15 minutes of training. And he is like a seasoned veteran in terms of handling the down and doffing the equipment and the mask and dove right in. And Patrick, your thoughts on it? I thought it was just, I couldn't believe how quickly you adapted to that.
Yeah, now, Patrick, I've seen you for many years in a lot of different things. Of course, your voice is legendary in Family Guy. You were in the movie Ted. You were in Rules of Engagement. We've seen you in so many different things. You're a big, manly man, but I don't think I've seen you in action roles. Were you just desperate to show us your action side? Or did you just want to play with fire?
Yeah, no, I want to play with fire. I felt pretty comfortable. I felt comfortable doing all of it. I've grown up with, you know, my buddies that I grew up with. Most of them became firemen. My brother-in-law is a fireman, and so it just, it seemed like a situation that I would have been just comfortable with, and also I appreciated, the opportunity to do something different like that too. So that was great. And of course, Jeff was an awesome fire coach, if there is such a thing, Jeff. Fire coach.
Now, Jeff, you went from normal firefighter to retirement successful author. Now, you and your wife split your time between here and Phoenix. You've now become a filmmaker thanks to this movie, Hoovie, which we're going to see at the Normal Theater on January 31st. And I promise details coming up here on WJBC. Now, maybe, stunt coordinator? Do you think there's some Hollywood opportunities for you?
It seems like a natural progression. I don't know.
I'm Susan Saunders with you 9 to 11 today on WJBC, and the second Tuesday of the month, I get the privilege of talking with Bloomington Police Chief Brendan Hefner and Public Information Officer Sarah Mayer. Welcome back to WJBC. I will just ask you both, since the snow seems to have picked up a little bit since I awoke this morning, we were looking at flurries. Chief, how were the road conditions for you? I mean, you're a pro driver, but how was it really on your drive over? Was it a little slippery?
Not for me, but I take precautions when I drive in this weather. I allow for longer stopping distances and drive at a speed that is safe, and that's usually lower than the speed limit. And I think that's what some people confuse themselves with, is that regardless of the weather, the speed limit, you can go to speed limit. No, you have to travel at a speed that is safe for the conditions.
I always like to tell myself I have permission to go slow. I have permission to drive as safely as I feel comfortable with. Sarah Mayer, how are the roads for you this morning? Because I worry that this type of weather is the worst for police officers. You wake up and you're like, oh, this is going to be a day.
Right. We don't have the option to stay home, but it's getting slick out. So I anticipate, unfortunately, we'll have some accidents. And thank you to our city crews who do an excellent job clearing the roads and making them safe for us.
Absolutely.
They really do. I have not been told of a collision alert at this point in time, but if you have an accident that doesn't involve any injuries and doesn't require a police officer on site, I'm sure everybody would be happy if you made that police report after exchanging information on a day like today, because the snow is really kind of picking up. We got other topics to cover, and let's get to them. First off, tell me about this incredibly sexually violent person. Well, I'll say I call him incredibly creepy guy, because when it came out on social media that you were looking for a particular suspect for some very nasty crimes, I can't say that I've seen you looking for somebody this hard before. Officer Mayer, what can you tell us about David Hermosillo?
He is wanted on a McLean County warrant for escape of a sexually violent person. We do consider him to be armed and dangerous and recommend caution is used. He was reported as escaped when we found that his ankle monitor had been cut off. We were notified by the monitoring agency for that. Right now, we've put it out to all media outlets on social media. It's reached about 87,000 people on social media to make them aware. We have the U.S. Marshal Task Force involved assisting with us, as well as the Illinois Attorney General's office. So very concerning, and we're doing everything we can to attempt to locate him.
This is not a person that you would want to in any way, shape, or form confront. You want to call 911 and say, hey, we're looking for this person. Chief, in your experience, when people get the ankle monitors, do they often cut them off? Or for the most part, is that effective?
No, they don't often cut them off, but we do have individuals who will take them to their limits and test how far they can go with ankle monitors, to test the distance and engage in activities that actually are the reason that they're wearing the ankle monitor. So we do have that. When I used to work in narcotics, we'd have people released and they would be back doing the same thing, except within either the residence. So, but that is uncommon. Obviously, we are concerned because that with that person's criminal history, that is something for us to be worried about. But, we have an officer, Albert, who diligently checks on sex offenders, not just this one, all of them who come here, to the point that sometimes, at least in a past administration with Public Defender's Office, they asked me one time, he really takes that serious, and why is he so serious about it? And I said, well, what are you asking me? That's what he's supposed to do. And they know, sex offenders who come here, they know that we don't play and that we do take the time to go check on them. Other places, they come and check in, sign in like they're supposed to when they get out. No one ever checks them. Yeah, I'm not talking about any law enforcement agency in particular, but I can tell you we check them. We keep track of them.
I'm very impressed in my adulthood to see the transparency that actually happens with law enforcement. There are so many tools that you can go to in an area before you decide to move in, before you decide to buy a home, that will tell you about your neighborhood, rates of crimes, what kind of crimes, how many sexual offenders are in your neighborhood. But at the same time, that information can be dangerous because too much information makes people sometimes hyperactive and overreactive. So is it making your life easier having that information out there that you've got a former sexual predator in your neighborhood?
We're doing our job, so that's good that they come and register. But I will tell you that, at my focus meetings, we do have residents come in and are concerned because sex offenders are living in their neighborhood. And the only thing that I can tell them is that, we've checked on them and they are living within the guidelines of what they can do, just as that person did. And I want to be very clear. We don't assign them. We don't tell them where they can live. We just make sure that they are
following the rules. But I could understand, someone being concerned, but at least like you said, we're very transparent. DOC is very transparent, so at least and you're aware of that.